Hello, everybody, and welcome in on back to the From the 50 Midweek Review. This is our free agency edition. It's our offseason edition, as it always is. But today is kind of like a free agency special. I'm Zach Zook. I got Nick Tolley on the ones and twos. We are brought to you by Bookit Sports. And Nick, I can't even keep up with the amount of moves that have been made over the last 2 days. It has been absolutely insane.
I know. I've been working a bunch of events at work and trying to just get an ESPN update after ESPN update of all these free agent frenzy signings.
It's been crazy. So we're going to highlight some of the biggest ones for you. We got some quarterback stuff, not really a lot. A lot of just, teams signing good players. And one of my first takeaways before we get into the actual signings was I thought that, the top guys were going to get paid, but the mid-level guys and the lower-level guys were not, and they were going to have a tough time finding deals, and that, these teams were going to be potentially hesitant to spend with the drop of the cap. It's going to be a lot harder to make the cap fit. You were thinking it was going to be, 2 years ago, it was going to be a whole hell of a lot higher than it is, 185 million, 182.5 million, whatever it is. And I think, I've heard with the TV deal that it's going to be vaulted back up to potentially 200, as high as 220 million. But I think what has really caught me off guard the first 2 days of free agency is just how fast everything's going. Everybody's getting paid. You could be a rotational defensive tackle. You could be a starting running back. You could be a starting left tackle. Everybody is getting paid, and everybody's up for grabs, and everybody's spending their money, which to me, it just goes to show how solid the NFL is and how solid of a place the sport is in. I remember back when things were kind of getting freaky with all the CTE stuff, and not that that isn't a real thing or that shouldn't be taken very seriously, because it should. But I remember, people making claims like football's not going to be around in 10 years. Football, yep. when your kids grow up, football is not going to be an option. And I thought that was a possibility back in the day. Everything was just so in flux with the sport. But I think, the state of the NFL and again, here in free agency is the latest example of that the state of the league, the state of football is in such a good place that the NFL did not get hurt this year. The cap went down. They made less money than they thought they were going to, but they don't rely on the gate as much as the Major League Baseball does, as much as the National Basketball Association does, as long as they get the games on TV, which they didn't miss a game, which was key during the year. We talked about that on the podcast. They had to do a couple of Tuesday and Wednesday games, but they did not miss a game. They made not all, but most of their money. And so, that I think was the biggest takeaway for the first 2 days for me is just boy, these owners, and they're not hesitant at all. If there was a 2020 pandemic, somebody forgot to send a memo to them because everybody is spending. And I think that the biggest story out of the first day of free agency has to be Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say the guy I think surpassed his spending in the last decade in free agency in a single day? And I believe I'm going to see if I can remember all the signings off the top of my head, Nick. And you tell me, it being a Northeast guy, if I got these right. He signed Jonnu Smith. He signed Matt Judon. He signed Nelson Aguilar. He also today got Hunter Henry. So that he was very, very active.
I think
I can't remember the other ones.
I think they spent over $200 million that first day.
And Hunter Henry's deal was not even a part of that.
Yeah.
So because they added to him today. Now, here's the one thing about free agency. It's always, a little bit of fool's gold, I think. We always talk about the teams that add in free agency. Oh, my God, they're doing so much in free agency. Oh, my God, they just added so much talent. And I think that the winner of free agency rarely wins in 2021 or the following season. What I think free agency is all about is filling needs. And I think the middle of the market guys and the lower market guys are typically the best plays or just the solid starters, finding value. I think that's more valuable than trying to sign somebody for $60, $70 million. And if you notice, There wasn't much of that yesterday. There was solid players getting signed to fair deals to teams that had money that needed to improve at a position in need. And we see teams across the league, the good teams do this. And the reason you do it is so you don't have to draft based on position come, the NFL draft. The NFL draft is about, best player available. It's more the philosophy of we're going to try to draft Pro Bowlers. We're going to try to draft all pros. We're going to try to draft cornerstones and foundational pieces of our franchise. That's not what free agency is about. Free agency is about plugging the holes and getting solid guys on the team. And there were a couple of teams to me that I think did a pretty good job of that. I think one of the bigger deals the day before free agency was the Aaron Jones signing for the Packers. And it's been kind of a controversial one. He signed for about $12.5 million, I think, average AAV. I heard before incentives, it's really like $9 million. And when you have the AAV of Derrick Henry at $12.5 million, I think Dalvin Cook makes $12.5 million, $13 million. So I thought it was a fair deal. And I thought that he was gone after this year, that they would probably re-sign, Jamal Williams to keep him around at a pretty fair, like he's not going to be an expensive free agent, I wouldn't think. You can keep him around, make A.J. Dillon the workhorse back, and then off you go. Now, I was elated when they signed Aaron Jones. I didn't think it was going to happen, especially when they didn't put the franchise tag on him. But the fact that they kept him, I was pretty happy. And for the number, as a fan, I thought it was fair. And I heard a lot of people grumbling about, what about the cap? Well, why'd you draft A.J. Dillon? That's a total failure. And to me, I don't see the merit in that argument, because now you have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who are two completely different players, but they used Jamal Williams in that offense a ton last year. They use Aaron Jones in the passing game a ton. And they're going to use A.J. Dillon basically in a more expanded role than what Jamal Williams had last year. So I think Aaron Jones, who, if you dig into the numbers, I think he's been better than even I thought he was. I read a stat, and you know what? I'm going to try and pull it up here, because it absolutely floored me just how good he has been.
He was great for my fantasy team last year.
So here is how special he's been. He's always viewed, I think, as like kind of a tier 2 back. He's not quite Derrick Henry. He's not quite Dalvin Cook. I think a lot of that has to do with draft pedigree, right? Yeah. Like he was a day 3 choice out of, I believe, UTEP. I believe he was a 3rd round draft choice out of UTEP. And Jamal Williams was a day 3 draft. I meant day 3, not 3rd round. He was drafted on day 3. He and Jamal Williams were in the same draft class, both drafted on day 3. And Jamal Williams out of BYU was selected ahead of Aaron Jones. And I think part of that, it's not about where you start in life. Like Devontae Adams is another great example of this. Like for the Packers specifically, I think was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school. One of his only offers was Fresno State, which is where he went. He ended up being a 2nd round draft choice. He is now one of the best receivers in the NFL. And so I think that the Aaron Jones signing, I didn't realize how good he's been. So here's the quote that I read. Jones, 26, is one of 2 players in NFL history to post 3,000 plus rushing yards, 35 plus rushing touchdowns, with an average of 5+ yards per carry in their first 4 seasons. Tally, can you guess who the only other person in NFL history is to do that?
No.
Jim Brown.
Wow.
It's only Aaron Jones and Jim Brown that have reached those marks of
good company.
3,000 rushing yards or higher, 35, I think it was, rushing touchdowns or higher. Jones has 37 rushing touchdowns, and then the yards per carry. And so I don't think I truly realized how solid he's been for Green Bay. He's perfect for the zone running scheme. And I know that it complicates the cap. The cap has always been complicated, for at least in Green Bay's situation with Aaron Rodgers, and you pay these quarterbacks these massive salaries. Whether or not some people are like, well, they should have signed Corey Linsley. You need Corey Linsley more than you need Aaron Jones. I don't disagree with that. but they weren't signing Corey Linsley, whether or not they got Aaron Jones. Corey Linsley signed yesterday with the LA Chargers to become the highest paid center in the NFL. They weren't re-signing him regardless. So I'm a fan of, and I think teams should strive for this. Keeping good players is a good thing, regardless of what you do in the draft. And I was a critic of the Packers draft last year. I don't know, if that was really the move. I certainly wouldn't have drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round, but he looks like a pretty good player. And if he's a good player, does it really matter? You draft the best player available, and the Packers clearly saw an opportunity to get a quarterback. They were not going to get an opportunity to get a quarterback this year. The quarterback class next year, I got news for you, it's really bad. These guys this year, it's it. So the fact that they were able to get that need last year, and then they were able to get the running back, you can nitpick it, but the fact of the matter is you can't draft based on positional. And so I thought that it was a solid signing by the Packers. I like that they gave him the extension. Yeah, I mean, you don't love paying a running back that much money, but what are you going to do? He's a really good player. Keeping good players on the team is a good thing. And so I think that with some of these guys coming back, we saw a lot of guys re-up with their former team. And I think that that's always a positive thing. I mean, unless you get handed out a stupid amount of money, which I think most teams now have been pretty smart with their cash. I think it's always a good thing to retain players. Like we saw Rob Gronkowski go back to the Bucs 1 year, $8 million.
Do you see the report on him today? What other team he was considering?
No, what was it?
He was going to go to Buffalo. It was between Buffalo and Tampa. He looked and seriously considered going to the hometown Buffalo Bills. And I wish he would. That would have been an electric atmosphere with him. Oh, it would have been so much fun.
So Rob Gronk is from the Buffalo area?
Yeah, he grew up in Williamsville.
So didn't he go to school at Arizona State?
At University of Arizona.
University of Arizona.
He was a Wildcat.
So yeah, he's U of A, not ASU. Yeah. But how the hell did he end up out there to play college football?
I have no idea, but I mean, what a smart move by him.
The interview he did with his girlfriend, the model Camille Kostek?
Yeah.
So
former Patriots cheerleader.
He basically said that he wanted to test free agency. He'd never been a free agent before. He signed the unreal extension with New England early on in his career, played out the entire thing, then retired and signed with the Bucs. But I don't think he was ever really technically a free agent. So I think he wanted to have that. And so he basically said he's a 1-year deal guy from here on out. So I wouldn't shut the door on him going to Buffalo. If not, obviously this year, then potentially next year.
I mean, I know he's got a bad back, so jumping through a table might not be great for him, but what a way, he announces his retirement after a year or two with the Bills by jumping through a table.
One of the more, outrageous contracts I did see was some of these guys that did, stay. Romeo Okwara with the Lions signed for 3 years and $35 million to stay in Detroit. In LA, Leonard Floyd signed a massive 4-year, $64 million extension to play with the Rams. His career got back on track, was never really what Chicago had hoped he was going to be. Solid player, but not really what they had hoped he was going to be, coming out of the draft in University of Georgia. So I thought that was the only one maybe that was a little rich. I thought the Romeo Okwara one, that was a good signing by the Lions. I thought Floyd, like I mentioned, just a little too rich for my taste. But I don't think you could criticize it too much. Some of the other deals that went down yesterday, you had Dalvin Tomlinson, the defensive tackle, sign a 2-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings. I thought that was a great signing by them. They now have Pierce and Tomlinson, who weigh, I think, a combined 650 pounds. So good luck running into that. One of the weirder things that I thought leading up to free agency was the Kansas City Chiefs cutting not one but both of their tackles. I mean, that doesn't scream like that's a great thing to me. But then they bring in Joe Dooney. from the Patriots. And so while I think he plays the interior offensive line, he still presents them with some options. I'm sure they have, some combo guards that they could slide out to tackle, or maybe they even want to experiment with playing Dooney out at tackle, or draft somebody. That seems like probably where they're going to be headed in the draft. But these teams, I think, have all been solid. I thought another team that did a really nice job was the Tennessee Titans. They signed Bud Dupree yesterday and Danico Autry. Now, Bud Dupree is coming off reconstructive ACL surgery, but had he been healthy, he would have signed for just a ton of money, been out of the Titans' price range in all likelihood. And so the way people heal from ACLs these days is really, I think, a lot safer of a gamble than it was 10 years ago. Yeah. And you're talking about a team and a defense in particular that really struggled without an edge rush. Harold Landry's okay, but he was totally by himself. And the Jadeveon Clowney signing was a disaster. And so they got not one, but two guys to help them out off the edge, which is going to make their corners look better. Now, they dropped both of their starting corners as well. Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson, both released, I'm pretty sure. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how they replace that, because I thought one of the bigger additions that they missed was Logan Ryan when they didn't bring him back to the 2020 team. Just such a solid slot corner and made that team and the defense just a whole heck of a lot better. But I thought the Titans just got so much better today. And it wasn't by doing anything crazy.
I'm interested to see how that offense still works, though, losing Corey Davis to the Jets and Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, two big parts of what they do. From the Titans' perspective, though, I'll tell you this. Anthony Firkser plays a whole heck of a lot more than I think anybody really ever understood. And so I think that it's pretty easy for them to just plug Firkser in. Now, I don't know what their depth is beyond Firkser, if they have a third guy, because they do like to run a lot of two tight end stuff. And so they might have to draft somebody, which is a terrible year for tight ends. But they might be signing somebody like a blocking tight end. But I think Firkser slides right into the Jonnu Smith role. I mean, for as good of a player as Jonnu Smith was, and how freakishly athletic he is, he's never really been all that productive of a player. He played behind Delaney Walker for, years. And it was only when they finally got rid of Walker, he started for I think this year, maybe last year. But that's pretty much been it. So I think with Jonnu Smith leaving, and who was the other player that you mentioned?
Corey Davis.
That's right. I think that I don't think that they're huge needs that they necessarily need to fill right away on the team. Corey Davis presents some challenges because you at least had some threats, right? You lost two pass catchers. So what is to stop teams now from just triple covering AJ Brown? You need to probably find some complement to him, either down the field as a possession wide receiver, somebody to at least force the defense to pay attention to, because nobody's respecting Firkser and nobody's going to respect whoever else they have on the depth chart at wideout.
Double AJ Brown and load the box to stop Derrick Henry.
Absolutely.
What else do they have that they can do?
So they're probably in need. I mean, it's a good point. They're probably in need now of another pass catcher. That'd probably be somewhere you look to on draft night, maybe day 2, early day 3, to get a slot guy, or try to draft a tight end maybe, so you can run, your two tight end stuff. You find these diamonds in the rough all the time, especially at positions like tight end. Draft somebody in the 5th round. He's good, so it's certainly possible for them to improve. But I thought that they just did a great job. I mean, what hurt them in 2020? It was that defense was not as good as it's been in the last, 3 or 4 years. And it's because they just did not have an edge presence at all. And so they got not one, but two guys to go with Harold Landry, who I actually think is an okay player. He's drafted in the 1st round. Maybe he's not producing like you thought he would, but he's a solid starter. So when you get guys to go with him, I think you'd actually be surprised at how much better that's going to make him next fall. Another team I thought on a similar plane to the Titans, and you brought up one of their signings already, was the New York Jets. I thought the New York Jets just did a great job yesterday in free agency. They signed Corey Davis from the Titans. They signed Carl Lawson from the Bengals. This is a team that franchise tagged Marcus May that just doesn't have a lot of solid starting level players in the building. Like they just don't have many NFLers. Like they even lost Robbie Anderson. Their one good bright spot of 2019. He left and went to the Panthers, and he's like the third receiver on the team down there. So like now I feel like they're in a good spot because now all of a sudden you look up and it's okay. Well, now you got Corey Davis, you got Denzel Mims, and you got Jamison Crowder in the slot, and you get some good beef on the defensive line with Carl Lawson. I saw they signed, I think, an offensive lineman as well, and that's clearly going to be a focus of theirs in the draft again. I think that they are likely to trade back. I think it feels like a popular trade back spot. Actually, it feels like they're going to trade back. And you tell me what you would do, Tally. I'd take a quarterback. I've watched a lot more of the guys over the last couple of weeks. You can't tell me Darnold's better than Zach Wilson. You can't tell me that with a straight face. No. You can't tell me he's better than Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Like he's just not. And so I don't see how you can justify keeping Darnold. But I think Darnold can be a starting level player. So if you don't want to run the offense through the quarterback and you just want to build a solid foundation, but I think this is your last chance to probably get a premier starter at the position, because after this, you're not going to be drafting low enough to do it. So, but I think if they opted to go with the keep Darnold plan, I think tackle, add another one. Like why not? You got Mekhi Becton last year. Let's get another one. And then you just start building the foundation. So I think Joe Douglas, we'll see how Robert Saleh is. I think that they're building the foundation of something really, really good in New York. And, that AFC East is slowly starting to become a really deep division when it has been so bad for so long. All of a sudden, the Bills made the AFC Championship. I mean, Robert Flores he's no slouch. It's Brian Flores, not Robert Flores, the MLB analyst. I do not think it's the first time I made that mistake, by the way. But Brian Flores is no slouch, kind of a badass, building a pretty good program. We'll see what they do at the quarterback position. But and then that leaves the Jets, who it feels like they're going in the right direction. Like Michael Ford is going to run the offense, Robert Saleh is going to run the defense. He's going to be the new head coach. Feels like this GM Joe Douglas, he's kind of got it figured out. Took Denzel Mims, Mekhi Becton last year. Had some decent, draft picks. They got to get a running back. They got to get some youth in the backfield. I read a stat the other day that Frank Gore had minus 110 yards based on expected yards per rush. Based on how good the blocking was, how many yards did you gain? They were minus over a football field for the year with Frank Gore back there. And I love Frank Gore, future Hall of Famer. He's a lock. Yeah. But time to get some youth in the backfield, I think, and maybe let some of these other guys spin or draft a guy. So I thought that was interesting.
Who else is, I think, kind of becoming sneaky good here?
Who's that?
The Jags.
Well, we'll see.
Well, they signed Marvin Jones today. I mean, I will say, at least on the offensive side, you signed Marvin Jones today to go with Chenault and DJ Shark. You have James Robinson in the backfield. You have Tyler Eifert at tight end. You
forget about the secret weapon, Keelan Cole.
Yeah, you got Keelan Cole. I mean, they got weapons all over.
D.D. Westbrook.
Yeah. Who's a much better 5 than he is your 1 or 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, you draft Trevor Lawrence, number 1. All right, now you have a solid quarterback, and then you work on that offensive line. That defense is still pretty solid. They have Miles Jack and those guys over there. So, I mean, they could really flip around that team pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kid, but it is interesting. I mean, they had a lot of money spent. They have a lot of picks. They should be a lot better. So I think the big question mark with them is, can Urban Meyer make it work? I mean, it's kind of been, one of the worst franchises historically in the league. I don't even think that's a take. And, they were just such a fun team. They had finally built it up, but then the franchise shows its true colors. It just imploded a year after it was good. And so you're going to get, one of the best quarterback prospects. I wrote an article for FromThe50.com today, making the case for and against each of the top first round quarterbacks. And Trevor Lawrence, I wrote it in the article. He's the best quarterback prospect I've seen since Andrew Luck. I don't think that's a take either. Who do you put? Burrow? No. he is that special. And so I think the big question is like his ability as a prospect cannot be argued. And we know he's going to Jacksonville. It is signed, sealed, and delivered. He's theirs.
If they don't take him, that'll curse that franchise forever, and they will never, ever be good.
If they don't take him, I think that the NFL should adopt what the British Premier League does and starts relegating franchises. And we're going to bring the Montreal Alouettes down from Canada, and they're going to be the 32nd NFL franchise. And the Jags are going to go play in Canada for a year, because that would be negligence of the highest level to not draft Trevor Lawrence in that spot.
Or you completely fire everyone associated with that, move the team to St. Louis, and just start over as a whole new franchise.
There you go. We got to sell the team to them, because I think ownership's kind of the issue there as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they just completely disappeared. Just start a new one here.
Yeah. So, the Jaguars are intriguing. I saw that they re-signed Dwayne Smoot. They got Carlos Brown Hyde. Too. Yep, Malcolm. They traded for Malcolm Brown. They signed a couple of safeties, Jonathan Ford. They signed Rayshon Jenkins as well. Not big names, but your fitting needs. They have just been building the foundation so that way they can, continue to make picks based on best player available. Of course, you're going to go Trevor Lawrence number 1, and then at 33, you're going to get another basically first rounder. So the signing of Marvin Jones too, I didn't mean to overshadow that. I think that's probably the biggest one they made. Marvin Jones is an underrated player. I mean, he really is. This is a guy that played with the Cincinnati Bengals as the number 2 behind AJ Green. It was really pretty good. I mean, under those Andy Dalton offenses is when he kind of started to shine. And then he took the deal with Detroit, went from one bad cat franchise to the other. And in Detroit, he was, the number 2 to Kenny Golladay, but posed a ton of problems. I mean, just like a lanky guy, stands 6'2", runs good routes, good hands, can go up and grab the ball. Like, that's a great compliment. Like, just exactly what you're saying. Like, a veteran presence to an otherwise pretty young receiving core that has some talent. Like, that's a great way to bring along a veteran quarterback to try to help the wide receivers grow. So I thought Jacksonville did a solid job. And you know what else? Tampa. I don't know how Tampa's keeping everybody, but kudos to them for finding a way, because they found out a way to sign Levante David. They did not franchise tag Shaquille Barrett. They franchise tag Godwin, and then they still worked out the deal, 4 years, $68 million to keep Shaquille Barrett. And I was thinking, under no circumstances can you let Barrett walk. He's way too good of a pass rusher, and they find out a way to keep him. And I think that the way that they're able to keep the band together. I mean, Gronk's coming back, Levante David's coming back, Godwin's coming back, Barrett's coming back. They're keeping the team together, and they're going to be really, really tough next year.
For sure. It also just came across, it looks like Buffalo just signed Emmanuel Sanders.
Oh, so another weapon for Josh Allen.
That's the John Brown replacement right there. There's no money released yet.
No money released. Yeah,
I was hoping that they would kind of
give you the years.
I think it's just a 1-year deal.
Okay.
I was hoping that they were going to get either Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones. Like, Marvin Jones didn't really sign for that much. I would think the Bills could have afforded him. 2 years, $14.5 million.
Marvin Jones or Kenny Golladay?
For Marvin Jones, it was 2 years, $14.5 million. That definitely would have been doable.
So, you know who I can't really understand why he hasn't been signed yet, and maybe it's like a money thing, but Kenny Golladay is an unbelievable wideout.
A lot of the wide receivers have had a slow market here and haven't signed yet.
Yes, that has certainly been the slowest position by far, but Galladay's at the top of it, and I'm kind of surprised he hasn't signed. And maybe that's part of the reason it's been a slow market. I mean, the top of the market always goes first, right? So if there's 4 or 5 teams interested in Golladay, they don't want to, until he signs, nobody's going to sign somebody else. So I've seen Golladay linked pretty heavily to the New York Giants. But he's a guy that, like, I'd have no problem giving him a ton of money. I mean, he's a true one. Like, I look at him in the same vein as Allen Robinson. who didn't get a second contract with his first team. Like, he's every bit as good, to be a one. He's a top 20 receiver in the NFL. And I think he's going to make a receiver needy team pretty happy. I don't think that you can really go wrong giving him a big contract. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys like you look up in 2 years and you're like, God damn, why did we do that? Let's get to the quarterbacks, Tolly, because not very big moves, but moves that I think are telling. And there are three that appear in my mind. The first is Andy Dalton to the Bears. And when this happened, I'm from Illinois. I have a lot of Bears fans that are friends. And they were all on the Russell Wilson hype train, and Deshaun Watson too, but more recently Russell Wilson because of the rumors and the little bullshit list he came out with. And when they signed Andy Dalton, I was cracking up at work. I was literally like laughing to myself like a maniacal psychopath at my desk, laughing at all the memes and how mad everybody was that they had signed the Red Rifle to 1 year's $10 million, basically shutting the door on another QB because they already have Nick Foles under contract. So they're going to be paying their backup. I believe, I don't know if they've restructured Foles or what he makes. I'm pretty sure Foles makes more than 10 mil.
It's like 17 and a half, if I'm not mistaken.
So they're paying their backup about double what they're going to be paying their starter. And boy, oh boy, I mean, you feel for Bears fans. Like,
well,
even as a Packers fan, you just do.
The report is that last year they were trying to decide, do we go with Nick Foles or Andy Dalton? And they chose Nick Foles. They could have had Andy Dalton last year.
That's negligible.
Yeah.
To choose Foles over Dalton even last year. I mean, I know hindsight's everything, but that was a terrible choice. I mean, Andy Dalton, for what it's worth, I mean, I know he's getting the sign is catching a lot of flack, as it rightfully should. I mean, you're in a year in which you're all going to get fired if you don't make the playoffs. They're going to blow the team up. And you decided Andy Dalton was going to be the guy that you were going to roll into the year with.
Is he really any better than what Mitch Trubisky is?
No.
I don't think so.
I thought you were going to say Nick Foles, and I would say significant. But
yes, with
Trubisky, I think they do different things. I think Andy Dalton gives you some advantages that Mitch just simply doesn't. Like, I think in a vacuum, Andy's a better player than Mitch. But like with Mitch, you get more mobility. You get the possibility that he improves. He's still just 2 years in Nagy's offense. I think he pretty much is what he is at this point, but he's also been injured at times too. Didn't get a full season last year. So I think that there's certain things about Mitch, like it's obviously like very low cost opportunity, like it's not going to cost you a lot. You can get him on the roster. Like, I don't know what Foles contract situations like to cut, like what the dead cap's like. I haven't checked, but I would have tried to get out from under that and maybe had brought back Mitch on a cheap deal and had him and Dalton battle it out. That makes more sense to me. But Dalton in a vacuum, I don't think is a bad player. I think he's just like bottom third, but a starting level player. I mean, he's like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's the Bengals to the playoffs.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's more of a meme, but like Dalton's just as good of a football player, in my opinion. So and like you said, those Bengals teams absolutely rolled people in the regular season. They could just never get it done in the postseason. But Dalton had those teams looking incredible. Who's throwing the passes? The Red Rifle was. So I don't think it's like that embarrassing of a signing out of context. But it's like then you place everything into context, and that's when it just becomes such a joke. And if I was a Bears fan, I'd be so livid. Like I don't blame my friends at all. I even almost feel bad for them because this is such a joke. Like, if you're going to roll into this season with Andy Dalton in this roster, you're no better than the Vikings are, I don't think. You're better off than the Lions, but like you're on the same tier, I think, as Minnesota. And Minnesota, like, let's be real. Minnesota's got at least Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Irv Smith's going to come along and be the starter now that Kyle Rudolph's gone. They got some pieces, and their head coach, I think, has proven a whole hell of a lot more than Matt Nagy has. Yeah. So to even suggest that they're better than them, let alone that they're better than the Packers, who has Aaron Rodgers and has been to back-to-back NFC title games, like, in a year where basically it's win the division or everybody's heads roll, I just think that it's so bad that Ryan Pace and them end up rolling with Dalton because I know it doesn't totally shut the door. I wouldn't think on potentially trading the farm to get, Russ or Deshaun, but I think financially it's going to be just basically impossible.
Well, this looks bad for Russ because now he's down to the Raiders, isn't he? Because the
Yeah,
Saints
which I
got
always
Jameson, Taysom Hill back, and
well, and that's the thing too. Like, and I said this on the pod, that list was bullshit. Like
yeah.
the Raiders were the only spot that even made a smidgen of sense because Chicago can't offer Seattle anything. What is Chicago offering that Seattle's accepting?
You're also
3
not
first-round picks?
Trade Russell Wilson in conference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind necessarily trading him in conference as much as because I mean, it's if as long as it's out of the division. I mean, yeah, I guess ideally you'd like to trade him to an AFC team.
Yeah.
But I guess that's my point. Is what can the Bears offer? 3 first-round picks and a defensive player? There's 7 other teams that are going to offer that. So, I want a quarterback back. The Cowboys couldn't. I guess the Cowboys could offer it, but they were always going to re-sign Dak. Dak was their first priority. And then you look at the Saints. They're going to trade Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. So what do the Saints have to offer? Their first-round draft picks are going to be even worse, because they actually have a really good roster. And so the Oakland Raiders were really the only team that ever made sense to me, because Derek Carr I'd put in that, kind of tier with Kirk Cousins and some of the other guys, where I think at least you could get Derek Carr back and build a good team around him, not the most expensive starter in the world. And you could kind of roll with that. But that his little list was always, little dumb to me. But the other signing was Ryan Fitzpatrick that I wanted to talk about, and then Jameis Winston. Fitzy goes to his 9th NFL team. He's going to go to the Washington football team. So they now have Taylor Heineke and Ryan Fitzpatrick under contract. I don't think this shuts the door on them at all going on to potentially draft the guy, because both those quarterbacks are just so cheap. Heineke is he could be your third string. So Fitzy will be the starter there until further notice, I would think. And then down in New Orleans, Jameis signs, and he's going to be the guy. I think they're going to have a quarterback battle. That's kind of what it sounds like. So we'll see who wins that one. I can't imagine Jameis doesn't, but I don't know, dude. I feel like Taysom Hill has
Taysom's making a lot more money than what Jameis is this year.
Well, wasn't his contract all voidable though?
Oh, so
it's incentive based.
It's basically team options, so they can each year they basically get a choice of if they want to void what's left. But
so basically,
he still had a lot of signing bonus money that got converted over. He's making pretty good money this year.
I basically saw that they had worked his deal like he was going to be the starter. And that way, if he does, the framework for his new deal would be in place and they wouldn't have to mess with it. But I'd anticipate with Jameis, I don't know how you roll into an NFL year and be like, Taysom Hill's our guy. I don't know how you do that. And I like Taysom Hill, but it's and they'll probably win some games. I can see him going 9-7 with Taysom Hill, but to do that, I don't know. That seems negligible. You want to talk about drafting Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers is 36? Fine, it's better than what the Saints are doing.
Yeah,
because I can't get behind that. That's just procrastination and kicking the can down the road at the highest level. You had all these years to jump up in the draft and get Jordan Love and get one of these late first round QBs and mold and develop a guy. You knew it's not as though Drew Brees' age was some secret, and he actually played for a pretty long time. And so now it's finally gotten to the point where now you're just street free agents is what you're using to replace a Hall of Famer.
Everyone also seemed to forget when he said before the year even started, him and NBC kind of came out and said he was going to NBC. He was going to call Notre Dame games and then move into Sunday Night Football, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's not retiring." They all seem surprised. I'm like, no, they said this a year ago.
Hey, I'm with you, Tolly. I had Jordan Love mocked to the Saints last year, and I can't believe they didn't take a quarterback. Yeah. And even the year before, they traded up with the Packers to get Davenport, the edge rusher. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So the other big, quarterback thing was Matt Ryan got a restructured deal. And basically from what I had read, and, it's not significant in terms of Matt Ryan, but here's the reason why it is. I had basically read that in his contract details, it basically makes him uncuttable next year, which to me signals that they're out of the quarterback business at pick number 4, which is significant news because they were liable to take somebody there. Yeah, so I got to get more details on the deal, if that is really what it means, or if they can still take a guy. But it basically seems like he's going to be around.
He converted $21 million of salary into bonus, which cleared $14 million of cap space for the Falcons this year.
For this year, but I think basically what it does
it probably just pushes it back.
I think his dead cap is like astronomical next year. Yeah. And so it basically makes it so you can't get rid of him. And so what that says to me is that you can't really cut him now.
Or do you take
you can't draft the guy?
Well, you could take Trey Lance at number 4. I mean, the guy only has played a couple games at the FCS level anyway. He sits this year, and maybe either you have an expensive backup next year, or you give him 2 years to sit and then play him. How many years did Aaron Rodgers sit before he finally got in? Like,
I think that more teams need to adopt that philosophy. I really do. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it's a little unrealistic because you're asking, I think he's basically sitting multiple years at this point, which again, isn't a bad thing. Like, it's not a bad thing. I texted a friend yesterday. I said, ideally, I'm never starting a rookie quarterback ever. If I'm starting a rookie quarterback, I have problems. Because if you're starting a rookie QB, you can already basically book it that you're not going to win the Super Bowl. It's just not going to happen. So that's, I think, all the big news for today. Did we miss anything, Tali, or can we wrap this thing up?
The only other one I didn't know if you'd want to touch on is Jacoby Brissette finally leaving the Colts. He just signed with the Dolphins, 1 year, $7.5 million to compete with Tua. And that's another,
I did want to touch on that. That's similar to the Matt Ryan. I think it puts the Dolphins out of the quarterback business at 3. I think the Dolphins, more so than the Falcons at 4, are now out of the quarterback business at 3. I mean, you got Brissette and Tua, 2 very solid options. Whereas the Falcons, while they did restructure Matt, they still just have the one option. So I think that the Dolphins out of the QB business at 3 is very interesting because now it's like, that's a trade back spot. Do the Eagles want to come up? Does somebody want to come up and jump the Falcons? What happens at that 3rd spot? Do they draft Jamar Chase? Do they draft Kyle Pitts? Do they draft Penei Sewell? They got a lot of options there. So very interesting.
Flores and Brissette were both at the Patriots together at one point too. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. So
I'm glad that the Dolphins are going to stick it out with Tua. And it sounds like he should be the day 1 starter at least. Yeah. The guy should have sat all of last year. Them bringing him in for Fitzpatrick when they did, when the team was playing well, was always a weird move. And then the fact that he didn't have as much success coming off of the hip. Mm-hmm. I mean, what did you think was going to happen? He was not fully healthy. He pushed it to get ready for that season, and you threw him into the Wolves in a spot where you didn't have to. I mean, it's one thing if you're 0-6, the franchise is just down the tubes, but the team was having success.
And they started him against the Rams first game. The guy's got Aaron Donald breathing down his neck every time.
A game they did win. They housed the Rams. I do remember that game very well. I remember TJ being pissed because he had taken the Rams that day, and Goff was just getting lit up. Yeah, I mean, very interesting. It's also, and we'll cover this more next week. We just got to the day 1 guys, and there will be more fallout, more deals to be signed. So we will get to that all next week. But for this week, I think that's going to do it for our show. We do want to give a shout out to Aces Wild at 208 North Main Street in Columbia, Illinois. We are presented by Bookit Sports, but head on out to 208 North Main Street to head on over to Aces Wild. They got another TV, as TJ mentioned. It's a good spot to hang out, have some drinks, and just, shoot the shit. So head on out to 208 North Main Street in Columbia, Illinois. And also hit us up on our text line, 904-990-3850, 904-990-3850. And I believe the 38 is FT50, so like from the 50. So it's 904-990-FT50 to leave a voicemail or a text. So please do that. And thank you so much for making us a part of your week. Tal, you got any closing thoughts?
Just everyone go download the Bookit Sports app. They just released Bookit Sports U as well. So if you're a college student,
that's right.
Check that out. They're giving away a couple $1,000 in prizes during March Madness. I know they've got a tournament
promotion
bracket group going on and all kinds of stuff this month. So
yeah, you can win some money. It's not, it's gonna be like kind of hard, but I mean, it's not, it's you can do it. It's like, it's not one of those things where it's like, we're going to give away a car to 1 out of 9 million people. It's like, what's the point? Yeah. You got a chance to win some money with some solid March Madness picks. So head on over, make your picks, be a part of it, get in on the action. So that'll do it for us here on the show. Thank you again so much for making us a part of your week, and we will see you next time. For now, though, for Nick Tolley, I'm Zach Zook. This has been the From the 50 Midweek Review.